Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to a new video. My name is Evelin Barta, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. If you are new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you have been already here, welcome back. So it's really nice to be back. I didn't post anything last week, so probably some of you have noticed that I was quiet, and that is because I was away to the UK. So I traveled to the UK for a few days to London. And I probably mentioned already in my previous videos that I used to live in London for almost 8 years, and I felt like I needed to visit it again. So London is my second home. It feels like just natural to be there. So I needed this trip. And I have to say that it was an interesting one. Subconsciously, I booked this trip for the 15th of May, which was very intense because on the 16th we have the full moon in Scorpio, and then also it was a lunar eclipse, which is a very, very intense time, very intense energies, very emotional. It's a very emotional sign. I talked about this eclipse, this particular one, in my May energy update video. And I never really take in consideration planetary aspects when I book a trip, and I didn't think about this at all when I booked it like more than a month ago. And then I realized that, oh, it's not only Mercury retrograde at this time, but then it's also the lunar eclipse. And yes, it was intense energetically. It was very, very heavy, almost to a degree of weirdness. So this is how it felt, the energy of London. Like familiar in a sense, but then weird. Weird as well, and heavy. And it was very interesting to see things from this perspective that I have now after taking a step back and changing my perspective about loads of things, because many things I did not notice. So they were like many moments of this blessed from the past kind of situations, and things that maybe I even forgot about, but then now they came back and now I see them differently. And I have to say that the whole thing is going in a very digitalized direction. This is what I'm seeing in London, and it's getting worse and worse. And these things I did not notice when I was living there. These things were not so evident, but now taking a step back and now living in a country that is more underdeveloped, I can see now how many things are being sold in the package of convenience in such a big city. For example, many places are no longer taking cash. And when you're living in such a big city where there's so much rushing around and busyness, and you're just tired after 8 hours of work or 9 hours, and you just want to get home. You want to get home as soon as possible. And it's super convenient for you when everyone is rushing around you on the underground to have your card and to pay with your card all the time. So things are being sold, as I said, in a package of convenience, but actually those things are extremely inorganic and are extremely toxic. And I was sitting in a restaurant with my friend, for example, and when we were about to pay, because I took cash with me, so I'm like, I'm gonna pay in most of the places with cash. And the waiter is like, oh no, we are so sorry, we are still not taking cash because of the pandemic, because of convenience. And I was saying to my friend, no, it's not like they are still not taking cash. They're never gonna take cash in the future. That's it for them. They are finished with cash. And it has nothing to do with the pandemic, okay? So this is how we are approaching a cashless society. And the easiest way to convince the population to obey to the system is to get them in a big city, because they will try to find the most convenient way for themselves, the most convenient way to survive, and the most comfortable way. And the most comfortable way will be their way, okay? It's the digitalized way, because it's so comfortable to just have your phone with you all the time, which you are using anyways for everything. You cannot exist in London and in a big city like that without a phone. So why not to pay with your phone then as well? So this is how we are approaching this. And then the next step of this digitalized economy will be the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, which will be totally centralized. And then the step after will be to pay with your skin, with a chip from under your skin. And that will be even more convenient because you don't need any devices. So this is the direction that we are going, and it's very scary, and it's so evident that it's happening in big cities, for example, London. Not to mention what is going on at the airports, because when I entered the UK, the only option that you have when they are checking your passport is to have the e-passport, or I don't know, like the digital passport, right? Where there's AI that is scanning your face and is identifying you based on your picture. And I was like, no, I don't want anyone to scan my face this time. And that felt so convenient some time ago, when I lived in London, like it was so comfortable, so convenient, and so quick and so cool. And now I was like, no, I don't want that. I want a real person to see me, to see my face, and to see my passport. And I didn't have that option anymore. There's no option for that. The only option to enter the UK is via this artificial intelligence scanning your face. So yeah, it was very interesting to see that. However, what I really loved about this trip was that I got to speak with people, with strangers on the street, and strangers would just start talking to me, which never really happened before when I used to live there. So, the energies of the zero-sum game and being there for yourself only in such a big city where this is the mentality that you have to make it on your own. So this zero-sum game and unhealthy mentality of you having to make it on your own there without asking for help of mine. So this mentality of mine has changed, and the energies around me changed as well. So yeah, I got to speak with people that were complete strangers, and they would talk to me. And what was very interesting to see as well is how people are thinking, because I started to talk about these social subjects and topics, that I'm discussing here, and they are all like woken up and they understand what is going on. They are seeing beyond what is happening. And that made me so happy. And that made me understand as well that even though there's no sense of community in these places, people are changing and the energies are shifting slowly, slowly in that sense. And more people understand that we do have to come together and we have to develop this sense of community again and coming together and cooperating, because that is the only way, that is our only way to achieve something. So yeah, things are shifting and the energies are shifting. Some people are still, of course, needing some sense of direction. They need some direction and to educate themselves about what is going on. But many people are naturally seeing through now what is happening in the world. So it is their healing journey, it is their path, and we cannot just categorize people, putting them in a box like, oh, we have this category of people in this box, and then we have the other group in the other box. Things are not black and white, and everyone has their own journey and their own pace and their own way of developing discernment. However, discernment is still something that needs to be developed. And this is what I'm seeing with many people and myself as well. I'm still working on that. I'm still a work in progress in that sense as well, and many other areas. So what I also noticed on London is that mental health issues are a big problem. And this is something that I did not notice when I was living there. And that is coming from this isolation concept, this division mentality, division consciousness, separation consciousness. And when you are there and you are not taking a step back, everything just seems so normal. That seems like the normal way of how society is functioning. Oh yeah, of course, there have been always homeless people, on the street. There have been always weirdos on the street as well that speak with themselves. That's absolutely normal. It's just part of everyday life. And no, that is not normal. It is not normal to pass by a person on the street and not to notice their suffering, because you are so busy with your life and you are so busy with your survival that you don't pay attention to that person. It's not normal. Okay, mental health problems are not normal. And if you're not taking a step back, and when you're living there, you are not noticing these things. They are part of your everyday life, as I said. And I had many of those moments of blasts from the past, which I did pay attention to this time. And I didn't pay attention to those things like 2 years ago because I was too busy with my own suffering. So yeah, it was an interesting trip. super intense time to be there, but we are not being given anything that we cannot handle, and everything happens for a reason, and I picked up this time for a reason. And then also my trip back, it was quite a nightmare, like even my journey to the airport, and I thought that I'm gonna miss my flight, but then in the end there were some delays as well with the flight. So it was very, very intense, again, very complicated, and I never really felt being very influenced or impacted by Mercury retrograde, even though I was born at the time of Mercury retrograde. And yeah, it definitely impacted this time my journey, and it made it very difficult. So yeah, it was interesting. And of course, while being in London, okay, this is my catch up about London, so sorry about the long intro. But while being there, what were people starting to talk about? Guess. The monkeypox, of course. It is the new fear mongering, it is the new fear porn, a new narrative. And I think that intuitively we could sense that something was in the making and something was coming. And whenever there's something in the making, they will always start to talk about that. So all these billionaires and these elites, right? I think Bill Gates was mentioning something about a new pandemic. And I could feel that intuitively as well. And that's why I was talking about this in my previous video when I was talking about the vaccines, that I cannot say that the same exact narrative will come back. However, I don't think that we are done with the COVID thing. But I could tell that, and from the reading as well, that something similar will come, by which they are hoping to achieve and to finish what they started with the COVID thing. So we will see how that plays out. I just did a reading on my Patreon yesterday about this monkeypox thing, if it has a potential to develop into something more serious. But I think it's very early to say anything. And I think it's very important to look at this for what it is and not to buy into fear, and to think carefully if we want to go along with a similar narrative, because the pressure is building up, and there will be put a lot of pressure still on people in terms of vaccinations and different medical procedures, as I was mentioning as well in my previous video. So it is important to understand that this is another narrative, and this is having the same end goal, which is essentially the modification, the bioengineering, like a genetic modification of a human being, and the obsession around hybridization and genetic modification, and then also the transhumanist agenda, which we can say that it is the new religion. It is the new religion, and then it's being kind of mixed up with our origin story and the obsession with Mars as well. That is being linked. I mean, they are trying to make us believe that it's linked, Mars, with our origin, and with the fact that we were created by some Anunnaki gods, and we were bioengineered by these Anunnaki gods, as I was mentioning as well in my previous videos. So Elon Musk is someone that is playing a very big part in this. And what is also fascinating is that we got to a point now where these planets, for example, Mars and the moon, and we are hearing more and more about the moon as well. So these planets are not only being used symbolically, they are no longer only using these planets as occult symbols, right? As they were used to be used in mysticism, for example, or in astrology. So like they are not only talking about the energies of these planets, but they are actually using now the planetary spheres, like the planetary bodies, to harvest energy physically. So there is an obsession now around going to different planets and kind of saving humanity, from destruction. And then we have a plan B, like Mars, for example. And there's this obsession around Mars in the case of Elon Musk. And that is not a coincidence only. That is not just like a weird, innovative idea of a weird billionaire that is being obsessed with Mars. That is not just a coincidence. That has a very, very powerful occult significance. And it has like a powerful occult symbolism as well, Mars, in that sense. And this is something that the Nazis were very obsessed about as well. It was part of the esoteric Nazi material in the past. And they are doing that with the moon as well now. So apparently there's a new project called the Life Ship, which I just heard about recently. And that is kind of like a Noah's Ark project that they want to colonize the moon. So they are collecting human DNA samples in order to build a DNA pyramid on the moon. And they are recruiting people that want to be part of that project. So in case something happens to our planet, these people can go to the moon and they can form colonies there. But for that, there's DNA that is needing. So it's very fascinating to see that, as I said, they are not only using these planets as for symbolism, as for occult symbolism to harvest energy, but they are actually harvesting now energy physically on these planets by placing the human DNA on these planets. So they can directly harvest the energies of these planets as well, in the name of science, in the name of innovation. And I have been wondering for some time, where is this obsession coming from around Mars and around the human origin? And why there is so much money put into the propaganda that wants to convince the entire population about our origins and wants to sell us like a false history about our origins, that we are some creations of some Anunnaki gods and progenitor gods, some ancient aliens that came and seeded humanity, which is a lie, because this is not how humanity has evolved, which I talked about already. So what is this obsession of Elon Musk, for example, around Mars? So Musk's project about Mars is rooted in his belief that his ancestors are coming from Mars, and there is a desire to return there. It's definitely a continuation of the Nazi beliefs, because the Nazis were linking themselves directly to Maldek and to the civilizations of Sumeria and Babylon as well. And they were convinced that they were coming from there. And that is because it was a civilized society. It was an early civilization. And this is what they want themselves to believe, that they are coming from there. And interestingly, there was a book written by Eric von Däniken, which was a bestseller book. They have sold like millions of copies of that book back then in the 60s. And the book that I'm talking about is The Chariots of the Gods. Probably many of you have read that book. And I have it in Hungarian. I remember growing up with that book because my brother got it from his school with an occasion. And I remember reading that book and I was fascinated, and it was so interesting. But it was full of lies about the human origin. Which many people don't know is that that book is, of course, is propagating the idea of us being created by some ancient aliens and some ancient gods, and us not being powerful enough to take control of our lives, and we are just some children, some products, right? But what many people don't know is that that book was co-written by someone that was a Nazi propagandist, that was a journalist for Hitler. So The Chariots of Gods was co-written and ghost-written by this person as well, that was part of the Nazi party, that group of people, that underground group of people, basically. And that is the connection between Mars and our origin, and the obsession of Elon Musk with Mars as well. And there's another very interesting fact, is that an individual called Werner von Braun wrote a book called Project Mars back in 1948, which I mentioned in my video about Elon Musk, by the way, my previous videos. But I just didn't know that the writer of that book, so this von Braun, he was also a Nazi scientist. And he wrote this book about colonizing Mars just after the Second World War. And guess what? The main character of the book, who will conquer Mars and who will play a big part in colonizing Mars, is called Elon. Now, what are the chances? So you understand that these are some very serious occult practices, and even though the book itself is fiction, but there are some very realistic elements in it, right? Because it's a very typical occult practice, again, to use these fiction elements to share information without taking responsibility. So to kind of hide things in plain sight. And this is how they can harvest energy and they can call forward the same outcome. So we are talking about some real connections here and some direct connections with the Nazis and that group of people. The same group of people, the same elites that destroyed Maldek. And then they went to Mars and destroyed Mars. And now they are trying to do the same with our planet, using the same methods, the same control grid that they did on these planets, yet expecting different results and hoping that they will do it right this time by controlling an entire population and by trying to genetically modify the population as well, and abusing technology and using technology for destructive purposes. And this is what Elon is part of. And there is a hero attachment around him, like a hero element around him as well. And they are doing the same with this Zelensky guy. He is the new hero. He's the new role model. And there's a whole new script that is being written to him. So no wonder that he is an actor. And both him and Elon Musk are young graduates and young leaders of the World Economic Forum. They are all part of the same agenda. There is an article written by Bloomberg from 2008 that confirms that, yes, Elon Musk is a young graduate as well of the World Economic Forum. They are all bringing forward some element of this great reset, some element of this control grid, of this new religion. The new religion that is taking social and political control. And one of them is bringing forward the symbiosis of machines and humans, like the merging of humans, the human brain with the machines. The other one is bringing forward another element of the same agenda, but they are all pointing in one direction. And that is, again, I will say it again, it is the direction of transhumanism. So these are some very serious occult elements, as I said, and we have to pay attention to them because they are hidden in plain sight. And it's very easy to harvest energy when you are being told the same thing over and over again. If you are being told a lie over and over again, it becomes your truth. You adopt it as your truth. And if you are being told over and over again, and this is part of your everyday life, that you need AI in order to survive, and you need AI in order to enhance your human experience, and this is the only way, and this is the only future, then you will adopt it as your truth, and you will believe that that is your way, which is just a continuation of the old occult practices and the old beliefs of the Nazis, for example, that is wanting to overwrite our history about our origin, that is wanting us to lose the mysteries and the interconnectedness with each other and nature. And it does want to get rid of our history, because if it gets rid of our history, then it can modify our future. It wants to get rid of the fact that, yes, humanity does evolve naturally, organically, through the transmutation of karma, through spiritual transmutation, the healing of karma, the healing of trauma, the healing of ourselves. This is what is lighting up our DNA. It's not something that is external. It's not something that is artificial. Our evolution and the transformation of our DNA is happening naturally. When we graduate through the solar system to the different planets and different planetary spheres, and with the interconnectedness of those planetary spheres, and then also the central sun, you cannot bypass and you cannot find shortcuts to your initiation and your organic evolution and graduation with something artificial, with inserting some chip in your brain and thinking that that will solve your problems and that will initiate you. No, the transmutation of our pain is what is lighting up our DNA. You cannot force that with genetic modification. You have to earn that. And that is the mistake of the transhumanist ideas and transhumanist agenda, thinking that you don't have to go inward in order to develop psychically, for example, that you don't have to heal in order to be able to evolve, that you can just, place a chip inside of your brain and you will be able to read the Akashic records. No, that doesn't work like that. And every light being that has your best interest at heart will teach you that you evolve through spirituality, through the Christ consciousness, from the top down and then bottom up. And every dark entity that doesn't have your best interest at heart will say that, no, you aren't capable of doing that. We have to give you that. And we will give you power if you let us have access to you. You can have everything that you want because you aren't capable of doing that. Who do you think that you are? We have to give you that, but only if you let us have access to you. So that is the difference. And again, we will have to develop discernment. This is our big test. So I think I will have to do a part 2 of this video where I will be talking about more in detail, because I have so many things to say about this topic and I don't want to make this video too long. And yeah, I think I will finish this recording now. But thank you everybody for being here, and thank you so much for everyone who is supporting me on my journey with my work, with your donations on Patreon. I'm so grateful for every single one of you. And then whoever is curious about what I'm posting on Patreon, you can check it out and see if it's something that you would be interested in. I'm posting different readings and then also meditations and then group guidances as well. Group guidances that I'm channeling and like sharing psychic insights. So yeah, if you want to support my work, you can do it on Patreon. But obviously, if my message and my videos are resonating with you. So thank you again for being here. Take care, everybody. And I cannot wait to see you next time.